Now we're understanding that the lockdown, while executed for a while, was really unnecessary for so long, as it's been pretty much destroying the economy all this time that was doing well before the lockdown. That remote work was fine for a while, but no perfect substitute for going to work for a truly productive day, and that the lockdown may have spoiled both employers and employees alike in that if folks can work from home, no need for paying the rent for those brick and mortar buildings. But what about the landlord's income? Was remote work worth it? If we had to lock down for so long, couldn't we have had something of a maybe hybrid system, say 3 days in, 4 days at work, or vice versa? The toll on families and relationships was also enormous, still is. Now, sure, there was success stories from remote work, but at what cost? So let's face it, we didn't get it right overall, in general, and it appears now with the lockdown, so many small businesses in particular not only suffered, but closed completely because they just couldn't make it one more day because they couldn't work from home. What's the overall lesson to be learned? Well, some say the lesson is never again have a knee-jerk reaction to a contagion by closing down whole countries. True, SARS-CoV-2 was novel, but creating ghost towns was a novelty and an expensive one. I'm Terry Gilberg. This is Timeline with Terry. Today's Timeline topic, the cure worse than the disease?
CTA is a call to action to all conservatives to save America from left-wing radicals.
Nearly 45% of the U.S. workforce already have plans for job hopping in 2021. Now, many of those 70 million job hoppers are just fed up and they're ready to work somewhere else, somewhere where they will be free. Maybe it's time for your talents to go to a city or a company that actually values your freedom. Post your resume on redballoon.work so that you can connect with this ever-growing list of free speech employers who would love to hire you.
All right, guys, you have signed up, right? You've joined freedomsquare.com. If you haven't, why not? This should have happened a decade ago. How did somebody not think of this earlier? If you're a business owner, we have a business directory to promote your business to patriots across the nation. So if you want to buy American, if you want to sell American, we have a business directory. Whatever it is, go now.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Welcome back to Timeline with Terry. We've had 2 years of working from home. That is, if one has a job and is employed. And the last 2 years have been stressful on employees and employers alike. Managing people remotely through technology, through tools like Zoom and Skype, checking in on people as they sit at home rather than sitting at their desk at work, is, in a word, a different vibe. And that vibe doesn't produce the results we need all the time. So is it time for maybe a 4-day work week at work or not? I've invited Spencer O'Leary on the program. He's the CEO of Active Ops of North America. His background is in operations management and sales in the banking sector in the UK, but he also took on sales in South Africa and India and later was promoted head of global sales for Active Ops. In 2020, he relocated to the United States and is in Dallas and is now responsible for Active Ops operations across all of North America. He knows a thing or two about managing people when they work remotely. Welcome, Spencer. And we're talking remotely on technology. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning, Terry.
Nice to have you. I've invited you to visit with us because your specialty, from what I know about you, is employee productivity remotely. That's kind of a mouthful, but we get it. In producing productive monitoring solutions to this idea of connecting remotely. Given the past 2 years of the cursed COVID, as I call it, where so many employees had to work from home, I'm sure there are managers that are pretty envious of the knowledge that you know. You've been all over the world. You've done this, I understand, for over 25 years in the banking sector. You're in and out of time zones. You know how to connect to people in other time zones. I think a lot of managers would have wanted your skills when the cursed COVID hit the United States. Am I right?
You're right, Terry. And here at ActiveOps, we provide solutions to those managers who, let's face it, back in 2019, most of them went to an office every day. Their team was sat in the same office every day, and they managed them. And in 2020, that changed. It's changing again now in 2022. But we're here to help those managers who are managing a workforce, whether they're working from home or whether they're working from the office. We need to get our societies and our businesses back into a productive and well-performing environment.
What do you hear on the road, both here in the United States and when you go abroad, like the UK, or I understand you just recently got back from Dubai, I assume with ActiveOps, unless it was a vacation for you, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it was a vacation. And when you've worked in India and when you've worked in South Africa, during this last couple of year period, what do you hear from managers? What's their biggest concern, their biggest gripe, their biggest question about how to do things better?
Well, I think we got really a tale of two halves. So in early 2020, managers talked to us about a worry, a concern, a real concern about a decrease in productivity. So that was when people went and were equipped with technology to work from home, whilst doing a job from home wasn't necessarily that difficult. Managing people who were working from home and making sure the workforce was productive was really, really challenging. So the first half of that story is one of production and an ability for people to physically do their job if they were working from home. And I think as we got into 2021 and certainly now into 2022, that second half of the story comes to fruition, which is now about employee wellness. It's about, whilst there were some good things about people working from home, whether it was a reduction in distractions or it was an ability to produce more output, it took a real toll on people's well-being. And workplace stress has increased. Real complications in sickness and nutrition caused by this.
All right, well, you said productivity and then employee wellness. First came productivity, then employee wellness. I think maybe it could have been the other way around. If employees are well at home and they are happy and they're connected and there are distractions like a cat going across the keyboard or the baby in the background needs a diaper change or the kids are freaking out because you're supposed to take them to soccer and they're going to be late. It seems to me that the employee wellness piece might have come first, right? And then that produces productivity. But you say the opposite.
I say the other way around. And one of the reasons I speak to a lot of senior leaders, whether they're from big businesses or small businesses, and they've talked about a 20-month and nearly a 24-month now journey where businesses have lived on adrenaline. They've lived on the need to produce output. They've lived on the need to find a new way of being able to manage their costs, to generate revenue and deliver on their customers' expectations. And at some point, that tank of adrenaline runs dry. And we're very much getting now to that stage where people dealt with the cat on the keyboard or the childcare requirements, the older person care requirements at home. They managed to deal with that. But you can only deal with those things for so long before you need to have a better systems, better processes in place if either homework or hybrid work is something that's there to stay.
I want to talk about hybrid in just a minute. But if employers are running on adrenaline, and I get that because who knew COVID was coming, right? I mean, maybe the administration did under President Trump and knew it for a while, but it kind of hit most people broadside I think it hit China broadside, and then before we knew it, it was in Italy, it was in India, it was in Iran, and boom, it was here within months. So it was novel. It hit us right in the face, most of us, and I can see how running on adrenaline is sort of like putting out this fire. You can't deal with employee wellness yet. You don't know who's sick. You don't know. So you're dealing with the fire, putting out the fire, and running on adrenaline. But Spencer, how long would you say that employers had to run on adrenaline in general before they kind of snapped out of that, calmed down, and then said, I got to pay attention to that employee on the other end of the screen and really find out how he's doing or she's doing and deal with the wellness, deal with the structure, deal with the schedule, and get that productivity back up, and not run on adrenaline in the new phase of productivity?
Yeah, and we really saw, and I experienced people really towards the end of last year, towards the end of 2021, who were saying that that adrenaline tank was running dry. People were experiencing burnout. Employee workplace stress was increasing, well-being was reducing. They were starting to see sales increase. They were starting to see attrition increase, and people, it's never been easier to move a job than it is today. For those who can work remotely, and it's not everybody, but for those who can, changing jobs is really easy. You have a new laptop or desktop shipped to your house, you sit in the same office in the same chair, and tomorrow you work for somebody else. So employers have been very keen to monitor that level of attrition happening in the workplace. Employees are voting with their feet. And if employers can't start to manage the balance between good production and good employee well-being, then they'll have less people working for them tomorrow for sure.
So have laptop will travel, right? But what about all those employees that aren't quite up to speed on the tech? Maybe their job is, to analyze literature or something like that, where it's pretty cerebral. They're looking at pen on pulp. They're not into this. They don't want to be into it. How did you find dealing with managers all around the world with this crisis, this COVID problem? How many people had to quickly figure out the world of tech, stumbled along, failed when things were due and deadlines were upon them? Or did you find that most managers said, funny enough, people adapted pretty quickly?
So for the most part, we found people adapting pretty quickly. And again, large businesses or small businesses, there's always been legislation and to a degree bureaucracy that stops innovation happening in certain environments, certainly in a time frame of business like. And COVID forced the hand of a lot of organizations to overcome some of those hurdles that they've had in place for years, whether it be in data protection, whether it be the ability to give people the technology or the means to work from home. I've heard dozens, if not hundreds, of stories of people who have found really innovative new ways to get work to their employees and to get work to customers to deliver a service where they've not been able to do it electronically and they've not been able to do it in an office environment. They've had to find a new way of doing it from home.
Where there's a will, there's a way. So you think, for the most part, the whole world of work, those that work, found ways of keeping it going, even if they ran on adrenaline for at least a year?
I do.
That's encouraging to hear. That's encouraging to hear, because I talk to small business owners, and the ones that didn't make it are very down in the dumps. And we know small businesses, you deal with big businesses, small businesses, there's some that just folded immediately. Service industries, small restaurants, mani-pedis, hair salons, this kind of thing. And they resented it, because if big businesses seem to sort of go on without a hitch in some cases because of people like you and managing other managers and giving them tips along the way. The small business owner, which is the lifeblood of America, is the small business owner. They stumbled, they fell, they're never coming back. This broadcast is out of Washington, D.C., and I can't tell you, Spencer, how many little shops along the street, okay, not the big high rises, but along the street, have folded and are continuing, if they're even open for maybe Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. People, let's say it's a restaurant, people are eating on the street. It's that look of European bistro on the street, right? Under some kind of a awning or a tent. But you're eating on the street. That's not exactly inviting for a person like me. I mean, in spite of having outdoor heaters and it looks kind of cozy and flowers on every table and maybe you've got your own little setting, it's eating on the street. And they are, as we say, clunk sliding along, if not having closed.
Yeah, and I speak to a lot of small business owners in my network here in Dallas, and most of them have had a real hard time over the past 2 years. And a lot of them are finding new ways in terms of engaging both with their ability to deliver the service that they've decided to deliver and deliver it to customers whose needs have changed through that process. I've been in a few restaurants recently, again locally in Dallas, where their business model has completely changed during the course of COVID. They've even remodeled their restaurant where 50% of the restaurant is now outside. And what's inside is very small, and inside is a food delivery bank of desks, because their business model now is delivering food to people's houses much more than being a restaurant that people come and enjoy in person. So a number of those different business models I've seen changed, and those businesses have unfortunately really felt the pain of going through that transition over the past couple of years.
Well, I tip my hat to the restaurant owners finding new ways to making it happen. I was also recently, and I forget her name, but I saw an interview with the salon owner in San Francisco that was, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with his story, maybe you were traveling at the time, but she did Nancy Pelosi's hair for approximately 5 to 6 years. And then had to lock down, except one Saturday morning, here comes Nancy Pelosi, right? And she's no mask on, no social distancing. She walks in, and some of the employees, knowing that she was coming and was a regular, I guess, in the San Francisco salon, had to come to work. And obviously, because they're going to give her a wash and a set and a cut and color, whatever it was. Anyway, she was highly criticized for this, and of course, took the brunt of that. And Nancy Pelosi keeps coming back, right? She's running again, by the way, at the age of, I think, 81. But the small business owner, really took a lot of flack for opening up that shop, even in liberal San Francisco, to service Nancy Pelosi. In time, that small business owner, a woman, I think had to close for some time. She just couldn't make it because nobody else other than Pelosi was coming through. But here's the good news. She then found a way to open a shop in Oklahoma, of all places. Oklahoma, probably where there's more freedom than just masking and social distancing, even 24 months into this game, right? All right. Her interview was about her experience with Pelosi, being down, finding scratch money to come back, finding a freedom state in Oklahoma, and then traveling every weekend between California to Oklahoma to cut hair. Now, that's entrepreneurial. And I don't know if she'll ever move there. Who knows? But San Francisco put the kibosh, and yet she found a way. I think that's a real winning story, in spite of the fact that she dealt with Nancy Pelosi.
And I think that's a great example of small business owners finding a new way. The service that small business owners provide, critical to our society, critical to our economy, but those services, or the need for those services, hasn't gone away. It's the need for those services in the environment that they're now provided that's perhaps changed. It might not have gone away, but it's certainly changed. So whether it's a hair salon, or it's a barber's, or it's a food outlet, is people want to consume their work at home. And I'm certainly seeing that people want to consume other services at home as well. And those small business owners that can start to accommodate some of that need, let's hope as they go through this year and next, they start to thrive.
Yeah, you can't exactly cut hair on Zoom unless, I don't know, maybe a salon owner would say, Terry, you need a cut, and pick up the scissors like this, and I start to do that. But I think it would look pretty ratty. Let me go back quickly with you, Spencer, to employee wellness for a minute, and then we'll go into some other tangents of this story. Employee wellness, well, it seems to me that many, many people were not mentally fit enough to endure these last 2 years. And we have seen statistics now, and I'll have a whole show on this in a minute, in another part of the day, a whole show on the lockdown producing so many other problems, including mental health, especially with teenagers, believe it or not. We have to take a break. I'd like you to ponder that, because we'll come back and talk about what you're hearing in the field, and not just in the United States, but worldwide, about mental health by being alone, perhaps, or in a chaotic home environment, and doing this kind of odd job through a computer every day. It takes a toll mentally on those who aren't those who aren't pretty mentally fit, I would say. All right, let's take a break. This is Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilbert with Spencer O'Leary. Be right back.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. Retailers, shopping channels, and now even banks have tried canceling myself and MyPillow. Well, during these times, your support has meant everything to us. My employees and I want to personally thank each and every one of you by passing the savings directly on to you. For a limited time, you can get my brand new product, My Slippers, for 50% off. That's the lowest price ever. And remember, My Slippers come with an exclusive 4-layer design. These layers combine to give you amazing comfort and support and help reduce stress on your feet. And with the durable indoor-outdoor sole, you can wear My Slippers anytime, anywhere. I personally guarantee these will be the most comfortable slippers you'll ever own. So go to MyPillow.com now and use the promo code on your screen, or call the 1-800 number below to get My Slippers for 50% off, the lowest price in history. And if you do it right now, I'm going to include a free gift with your purchase. Thank you and God bless.
Charlize, luxury skincare for real women, because you're worth it.
Grits and Eggs Breakfast Kitchen, where every dish has fresh and delicious farm-to-table ingredients that are sure to uplift your taste buds. Experience our creamy grits topped with grilled shrimp in our homemade shrimp sauce. Try our fried whole chicken wings or our marinated lamb chops cooked to your perfection. Come try Costa Coffee. It's the best coffee you've never tasted. Grits and Eggs Breakfast Kitchen, located at 3205 Cumberland Boulevard, Southeast, Suite 105 in Atlanta. Grits and Eggs Breakfast Kitchen. Enter as strangers, leave as friends. Cheers.
The principles of liberty, freedom, and the tenets of our constitutional republic are under attack. That's why we are building freedomsquare.com. Freedomsquare.com, designed to unite freedom-loving Americans. Freedomsquare.com. Freedom lives here.
This is Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilbert. This is the show where we invite expert guests not to give us just a soundbite on what they know and their experiences, but really dig deep and go broad on the subject matter, because our world has a lot of vexing issues. Maybe that's putting it nicely. Some people say the world's falling apart, Terry, but I'll just leave it at vexing issues. And when I invite experts to come on, they help peel back the onion of that story and give us their best. Spencer O'Leary is with us, and we're talking about his world which is operating in many parts of the world, and he manages people, he manages managers so that remote work can be productive and there's wellness with the employee. Before the break, Spencer, I was talking about the mental health of folks. Now, we are social creatures. Man is a social creature. I like talking to you this way, but it would be nicer if you were right in front of me, right? And this constant kind of back and forth through a computer, through a keyboard, that wears on people, especially if they're extroverts, especially if they're in a social kind of workplace. What are you hearing now after 2 years of this, and not just here in the United States, but worldwide, of this constant going through a third party, which is the computer, which is the TV screen, and trying to relate, where we're going into this world of pictures and audio, but not the real McCoy, not the three-dimensional real person? That's difficult on some people.
It's difficult, Terry, and I'm hearing a consistent picture when I speak to different managers working anywhere on the globe. And that is one that back in early 2020, people were, primary concern was productivity. Can people produce the same level of output from home? And we've got data, our software collects data about people's production, and we can demonstrate that actually productivity, for the most part, was better when people work from home.
Really?
When you start to dig into that and work out why, you start to understand why some of the other data points, like creativity, like agility, like employee well-being, really deteriorated through that period. People are working longer hours than they did, even if you take into account their commutes that they don't do anymore. They're working longer hours than they've ever done. They're working very strange hours to try and accommodate childcare, older people care. We've got a typical working day now of people that for some can stretch from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and they have regular breaks to get the kids breakfast and take the kids to school and look after their parents in the afternoon. It's a really strange working pattern. And all of those things really do start to take their toll on people. People's rest and relaxation time isn't focused on certain times of the day. It's interlinked and interspersed with working time. And that creates this real sort of mental position where I'm never really working and I'm never really relaxing. I'm kind of somewhere in the zone of both. And whilst that situation has been very difficult in the US and in Canada, when we go to some parts of the world who are less equipped to work through technology, places like India and places like the Philippines, particularly where we've got people now living in multi-generation households. We've got 4 and 5 generations of people trying to, one, live in the same house, and now they're trying to work in the same house, all using a poor internet connection, all trying to do things on Teams and video and emails, and it's just chaos. And like we talked about before the break, people have managed to do that working on adrenaline, working a 12-hour working day. We can all do that for a few weeks, but not for a few months, and certainly not for a few years. So it starts to take its toll on people's well-being. And we all know that mental health has a real spectrum, and it ends in a very horrible place. And let's hope we can help managers to help their employees by having better data about people's well-being, and rather trying to cure a well-being issue when it's occurred, let's have those early signs and try and prevent those things from happening in the first place.
And you help managers notice those things and get ahead of that?
Exactly that, Terry. It's about getting ahead. It's about noticing when an employee's working behavior has changed. When we worked in an office in 2019, and I had my 5 people, my 50 people, my 5,000 people, all there in the same buildings and offices, we had the water cooler moment, we had the coffee machine moment, we interacted with other humans, and it was never easy to spot if someone was having a potential well-being issue. But it was a damn sight easier than trying to do it over Teams. Every time we talk to a team member that we maybe now do for 60 minutes or even 30 minutes a day, or for some 60 or 30 minutes a week, it's quite easy to put that face on and have an interaction for 30 minutes and pretend to be okay. It's hard to do when you're in an office for 7 hours a day for 5 days a week. So some sign is there, and managers can have that early interaction. So we help managers who are managing their remote workforce see those early signs and early indicators of potential well-being issues, and hopefully move into prevention mode rather than cure.
Yeah. I suppose you tell the managers to tell their employees, stay away from knives, right? I'm reminded of a friend of mine who had to work from home for all these months. And she said to me, she logs on about 7 a.m., right? And she says from the waist down, she's still in her PJs. I said, I know, people cheat that way. But up here, from the waist up, she's in a business suit. She says, sometimes the makeup is on, so I look presentable as if it's an office, only a picture of me in the office. And sometimes there's bags under the eyes and I don't have the hair quite right. And then she said, and I don't care. And I said, oh, when did that slide? She said, well, it started to slide because I have to be there at 7. And then we wait for Tom and Dick and Sally and Harry and everybody else and Susie and Sam. And pretty soon it's a spectrum of the Brady Bunch, right? Remember that old television series, if you remember? And there's all these pictures, right? And this takes a while for everybody to pot up and get active. And here we go. And she says, I could have been in the bathroom getting my hair right, but oh boy, I'm the eager beaver and I want to impress the boss, being there right at 7. But I'm waiting on all of these people. Then she sits there from 7 a.m., she said, until about, maybe 7 p.m. She said, when we get a break, it's about 5 minutes because it takes extra time for everybody to come back. And I'm thinking of the candy bar in my kitchen. I'm thinking of maybe, I don't know, making more coffee or having a glass of wine that isn't on camera. I never get a chance to get up and really stretch, much less walk or go to the gym. And when they talk about flatten the curve, she says, I need to flatten my curve. And after a while, she just says, I can't stand it. Good for her, though, Spencer, that the boss said, come back. Then she contrasts that with the coming back. Now she's in her cubby. She sees Sam or Dick or whoever it is, and they say, hey, how you doing? Hey, did you get that whatever email? She goes, yeah, no worries. He leaves. It's a split second to find out if somebody got an email. Whereas it's 20 minutes to gather everybody around because it's an all play, right? The boss wants to talk to everybody. She said the waste of time has taken such a toll on her. She's an ambitious woman. She is a career professional. She is work-oriented. And she tells me her New Year's resolution was to always be on time. She says, and now I resent when others aren't like me. Except if we're back in the office, they go, hey, how you doing? Here you go. Meet me in the coffee. And there's not candy bars around. She doesn't have to flatten her curve. She can actually go and walk around the block if it's lunchtime if she wants to. Big contrast. She said, I sunk into depression before, but now I'm coming out of it.
That's great to hear that she's coming out of it. And I see regularly that our software collects data about what people do between their 7 a.m. and their 7 p.m. And some of the things that our data has shown us over the past 2 years have been quite eye-opening and different to what we would have expected. So people's working hours have increased, but when you start to dig into those working hours, the amount of time that people spend in meetings versus actually doing their work has dramatically changed. Everyone seems to need to be in every meeting. The amount of time between meetings, you used to get 5 or 10 minutes to leave one room and walk to the other room for the next meeting. We now sit in the same chair at the same desk, you hit a button and you're in the next meeting. There's no gap. The amount of breaks that people take, most organizations encourage people to take a 30-minute lunch break and maybe a 5-10 minute in the morning and a 5-10 minute in the afternoon to go grab a coffee, and those breaks just don't exist. People
they vanish.
Meeting after meeting after meeting, and there's no lunch, there's no breaks, and all of those things take a toll on people. The other things that we've seen dramatically reduce through people constantly and continually working from home is things like creativity. It's things like agility and ideas generation, and it's all those moments you talked about where you bump into someone in the corridor, you bump into someone at the coffee machine, the water cooler, and you generate ideas. We're social animals. We like to interact. We like to collaborate to generate new thoughts. And that's nearly hard. It's really hard, if not impossible, to do continuously over Teams. So we're very much starting to see now right across the globe that both employers are starting to encourage and embrace hybrid work. And hybrid work means so many things to so many different people. And we're starting to see that employees are wanting to get back to the workplace at least some days of the week and try and have the flexibility to work at home for 2 or 3 days a week and do their work, do their production, try and stay off Teams and off Zoom and actually get something done. And then 2 or 3 days a week going into the office, meeting with people, collaborating, enjoying the art of congregation, generating ideas. And if we can get that balance right, and we can really help both employees and employers find a way, we can have people working from home and enjoying that experience. We can have people coming together, having that better well-being experience and producing better ideas and generating new thoughts. And if all of that starts to help some of our downtown environments where those shops and restaurants can stay open, then that's got to be a good place.
All right, since you mentioned hybrid work, now's a good time to segue into that and dig a little deeper. Let me ask you this, Spencer. Do you think with this shift in how work has been done because of the COVID craziness, right? Do you think our world might be better off, more productive, people would be happier in the job if we just said, to heck with it. 5-day work week, let's take it down to 4. Now, you've worked all over the world. This isn't a popular thing to say in America or even on a show like this. But I know other countries honor a 4-day work week more. In fact, in England, I have a daughter in England, they look at, a month vacation. I used to live in Italy. It was a month vacation. So people can unwind and really get away. What about the 4-day work week? And then what about a long stint of a vacation?
I think on both those things, Terry, they have their pros and cons. So again, we've data that we help our customers understand about the performance of their employees. Remember, performance is a balance of productivity and well-being. Get those
right.
2 things right.
Right.
And we've data that says for some, a 4-day week works. But to do a 4-day week, to do 5 days work in 4 days, I need to work longer days. And we've got data that suggests a longer working day reduces production. So I end up doing 7 hours work in 9 because I produce at a lower rate of output as I get tired through the day. So if what's happening is I do the math, but 4 9-hour days instead of 5 7-hour days, then I could find that I don't produce 5 days worth of work in 4. I produce 4 days worth of work in 4. And some other measures change as I have longer working hours. Things like the quality of my work. As I work longer hours, I get slower. And as I work longer hours, I sometimes make more mistakes. So again, if I'm doing 4 days work in 4 days, not 5, and I'm making more mistakes, which is creating rework, that's not a great environment for either the employee or the employer. We've got other examples where a 4-day week does work and people can do 5 days work in 4. They enjoy the experience of having maybe a long weekend or a day off in the middle of the week. So it's really hard to know what's the right answer. The key for me is making sure that every employer has the right level of data so they can try different working patterns, they can try different things,
I see.
And they can work out what's right for them and what's right for their employees. If they can get the balance right, production's good, well-being's good, performance is good, it works for the employer and it works for the employee, what's not to like? But a lot of employers who try it, they don't have the data, they don't know what's working and what's not, and their world's either driven by them as the employer or their employees, and they're not finding a great combination of both.
And so that's where you come in, to give them data. All right, so you're suggesting, I suppose, that a 4-day work week could be, not necessarily, but could be part of a larger hybrid model. Do I have that right?
You do, and the hybrid model being, how am I going to ensure I'm delivering production, I'm looking after well-being, I'm driving creativity, all the things that we just talked about. How can I give some employees what they want? Those introverts who perhaps do enjoy more working from home. But how do I give my extroverts the ability to say, some people can't work from home. Some people don't want to work from home. They just want to come into an office and sit in a booth and produce what they want to produce. That's the way that they're socially built. So I don't think there's a black, there's a white, there's a right, there's a wrong answer to these things. It's It's very much what's right for the employer, what's right for the employer's customers. We all have different needs, and what's right for the employees that work for that organization. Get the right data, create the right approach, and this can be a really positive experience for employee and employer.
All right, quick break again, Spencer. When we come back, I'd like to delve a little bit more into the hybrid and whether or not you think going forward we're going to be in a hybrid period for some time, or going forward it's the way forward for a long time, because this is our world. I'm Terry Gilberg. We'll be right back.
CTA is a call to action to all conservatives to save America from left-wing radicals.
Nearly 45% of the U.S. workforce already have plans for job hopping in 2021. Now, many of those 70 million job hoppers are just fed up, and they're ready to work somewhere else. Somewhere where they will be free. Maybe it's time for your talents to go to a city or a company that actually values your freedom. Post your resume on redballoon.org so that you can connect with this ever-growing list of free speech employers who would love to hire you.
The following is a health warning to all liberals. Please do not watch conservative television of America, as prolonged viewing can cause your brain to swell and explode and mess up your couch. CTA values all lives from the first heartbeat in the womb to the last dying breath. Conservative television of America, we say what you're thinking.
Okay. This is Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilberg. We're talking about the working world, and not just here in the United States, but world. Perhaps, shall I say, and be positive post-COVID. Am I okay to say post-COVID? Because it seems like Omicron is almost in the rearview mirror, which is a good thing. I was asking before the break about, is the hybrid model, Spencer, something that you think is here for now another short term, maybe another 3 to 5 years? Or do you think this hybrid model is here for a long time? Maybe the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years, it's here to stay?
I think, Terry, it's quite different in different geographies around the world. There are some countries who are just better equipped to be able to offer or accommodate a hybrid working model for a longer period of time. Some of the poorer countries in the world, we talked about employee well-being being a real challenge, but just physically being able to continually work in a hybrid model in India, in Asia, where there's those multi-generation households, poor internet, that's a real challenge. We really need to get those people back to the office, into an environment where they can produce the right amount of output. But I think, particularly in the US, today, employees are voting with their feet. And if employers can't offer people at least a hybrid model, for some it's an entire working from home model, but if they can't offer them a hybrid model, I'm starting to see employers using this offer of hybrid work, which really means working from home a few days a week. But they're using that as a way to attract and retain good talent. They're using lots of other things, a lot of them with a dollar sign at the start, to try and attract and retain good talent. But if I can accommodate hybrid work, and I can get good performance, production and well-being, and I can offer my employees a way of doing that a couple of days a week working from home, that's a real way for some organizations to attract and retain good talent. And as long as that continues, hybrid work I think will be here to stay. So I think it's a sliding scale. For some, hybrid work is maybe only 1 day a week working from home. I certainly experience when I commute to the office that I'm here in Dallas, in Los Colinas at the moment, that Fridays seems to be a very empty day on the commute coming in the office.
Really?
And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday used to be quite busy. Mondays and Fridays quiet. I'm seeing Mondays become busier now, more cars on the road, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is like a good old 2019 day with everyone on the commute. So I'm starting to see that the hybrid model seems to be Fridays home, Mondays a lot of people at home, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is sort of the days for coming into the office and starting to see that come to fruition. So I think hybrid work somewhere on that sliding scale is here to stay. I'm also seeing a lot of real estate, whether it be large corporate real estate or even smaller offices, that are starting to remodel to accommodate some of those things. So some of the things that hybrid work drives is when people are in the office, they're not there just to sit in a booth and do their work for 7 hours. They want to have meetings, they want to collaborate, they want to get together. So the office I'm in here in Los Colinas, we have a 50-person office, but we've only 20 desks. The rest of the office is made up of some couches, some meeting space. We've got a big table that everyone sits around and breaks bread together and eats food, try and generate some ideas. So what a change in an office environment. In 2019, this had had 50 booths in it, 50 desks. It's now got less than half, and it's got this sort of collaboration space. And I'm seeing lots of businesses accommodate that model. I think once corporate America changes its real estate and it takes away half the desks and puts in this collaboration space, it's going to be hard to go back to a full-time office-based working environment because the office won't now be made for that type of work.
The geography of the office has changed, which says to me, in a word, teamwork.
Absolutely, teamwork. I think you said at the start of this session that we're social animals. We like to get together, and teamwork is about having personal relationships with other human beings. It's having that relationship where if there is a challenge and I'm putting out a fire, I can just pick the phone up and ring my friend that I had coffee with yesterday. That's a very different environment. I hear lots of stories today where not only have people joined the company and never met one of their co-workers, they've joined the company and left the company. They're now working for somebody else. And for 2 years, they worked for an organization and they never met face-to-face one of their colleagues. What a challenging working environment if you've never met the people that you try and interact with every day. When we do it together, when we do it face-to-face, we're much better off as humans, we're much better off as workers.
Before we run out of time with you, and you're a fascinating man to talk to because you do this all over the world, but I wanted to ask you about this. I was reading some things about you, and your philosophy between that you try to manifest to bosses is, quote, many bosses just lay out to the worker what he or she wants done, but does not explain why the boss wants it done. You are big, if I understand right, on explaining to those managers, to those bosses, to explain to their workers the why it needs to be done your way, meaning the boss's way, and to do it in a kind of kinder, gentler way so that the team kind of sees the vision. You said that if you explained your thinking and why it was important to you, meaning the boss, you create more of a team and far more cooperation will follow. I think that's good advice.
And I think that's absolutely key. I always try and take things down to the simplest level. And I always think, I've got children, and I think about when you're explaining something to a child, and if you just tell children what to do, generally they do it when you're in the room and don't do it when you're not in the room. But explaining to them why it's important for you and why it's important for them that they do what you do, we get a better reaction. And that's just human behavior that we've learned ever since we were young and ever since we were children. So I absolutely do find if you just instruct and demand your managers to instruct and demand of their team workers what needs to be done, nobody really understands what good looks like. Nobody understands why they're doing what they're doing. If you can create an environment where people understand what's good for the company, what's good for you as the boss, what's good for your managers and good for your employees, and you're all driving that same pathway to deliver the same outcome, the same result, you really start to find you've got an entire workforce that's trying to achieve exactly the same goal, and they're all heading in the same direction. So many businesses just demand and dictate what's needed to be done. Nobody really understands why it's important. And then, not surprisingly, you've got lots of people going in lots of different directions because there's this lack of understanding about what good looks like and how to achieve it.
And this is not to say that every manager has to get into the nitty gritty, the nitpicking, the in the weeds, explaining every single thing that's in his head, but rather sort of the big blueprint. That's what I take from your vision when you talk to managers. Finally, let's come back to current events. There's many businesses that want employees, if they don't have vaccine cards, to get tested every day, and to continue with the masking. What's your take on some of this as we go forward? Even if Omicron and SARS-CoV-2 with all its variants is in the rearview mirror. How do you manage that? Different philosophies with different managers.
Yeah, different philosophies and different ways of needing to manage based on the environment that people find themselves in. So we all hear about those stories where pick any employer in the United States, and they've got people coming back into the office and they've decided to not have a vaccine policy. They've decided not to have a testing policy. They either mask or they don't. But then something changes. And tomorrow they get an outbreak in the office and one person brings, it could be COVID or the next COVID. They bring something into the office and it's contagious and it spreads to the workforce. We need to create an environment where businesses don't need to stop working because suddenly they need to work in a different way. We need to have the data, the management processes, the management skills, where merely at the flick of a switch, a business can turn around and work differently because their world has suddenly changed. So we're helping businesses across North America have those data points and those policies and procedures in place. Because one thing's for sure, whatever their policy for next week, their policy next month and next quarter and next year is probably going to have to be different if they want their business to survive as we go forward. So I find it hard to comment on the what's right and what's wrong, because I really do think it's different for every business, depending on where they are in the world, the services they provide to their customers, where their workforce sits, and are they able to work remote in the office or hybrid. But I'd encourage any manager, any boss who's listening today, is decide on a process that works for you today, but don't kid yourself that you don't need the flexibility and agility to change that process tomorrow, because COVID's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to continue in one form or another. It's going to infect our workplace, and we need to be agile. We need to adapt our business when it changes.
And Active Ops provides data. That's what you're all about. But so does the medical community. So does the scientific community. As we go forward, more and more data is coming out about lockdowns and masking and this and that, and whether you should get the shot or a second shot, a booster or not, or kids, or how this all is going to. But it takes time for this data to come in. So I would imagine it's not just Active Ops' data, although that's why they would hire you and your team to figure out, well, what does the data show for my team, but also what does the scientific data show vis-a-vis this disease. And I agree with you. I do not think that it's going away. Viruses mutate, they get weaker as they do, and then after a while, we get herd immunity. And we live with it. We live with the flu. We live with and so those that are vaccinated, good. Those who have natural immunity, good. We're in a herd immunity environment, I think, now in America. Can't speak to other countries, but I would imagine many of the other Western countries are. And it's something that we'll have to live with and look at that data as well. Don't you agree?
I do, and I don't think, Terry, it's just COVID. I think we've created a situation around the world where the spreading of disease between humans it's not uncommon, whether it's a common cold, whether it's influenza, whether it's now COVID, whether it's bird flu, swine flu, whatever it may be. We've created a society where it's just easier than it's ever been to transmit disease to each other. So whatever the situation is with COVID, there's probably something else that comes down the road. And businesses, large and small, just need to make sure that they've got the procedures, the processes, all of those data points that you talked about, to make sure that they're much more flexible and agile than they were in April 2020, where our only answer to this new world was to send everybody home and to shut most of our businesses. And the world stopped for however many months it seemed to stop for. We can't afford to do that again, but what we can do is be ready for the next time that it happens and make sure that if I need to send my 10 people, my 100 people, or my 10,000 people home to work, that businesses can continue and they can adopt whatever's needed to cope with whatever the world's going to throw at us.
And I suppose you really drive this message home to managers who might be stuck in an old model in their mind to say, look, the world is ever changing. It's in flux. I mean, for crying out loud, if we have war upon us pretty soon and we're trying to help a country get through a war, for example, Ukraine or Taiwan, that is going to change the picture, whether managers like it or not. And they don't know exactly how it's going to change. All of our lives change. Stock market may go down significantly, et cetera, et cetera. In closing, because I think we only have a couple of minutes left, which countries, because you go around the world, which countries have all of this hybrid model together better than others? Can you give me the top 5 that get it, in your opinion? And where's the United States?
And really good question. I think lots of countries are in different stages of their recovery from COVID. So we heard only, I think it was this weekend or the end of last week, Australia has finally opened its borders to international travelers. So there's a country
finally.
Really, they embraced lockdown entirely. And my colleagues who work in Australia, they've had a hybrid or they've had an at-home working model for a lot longer than most countries around the world. They've not even started their hybrid journey about how they go part-time back to the office just yet. So I think Australia is probably quite a way behind having adopted that model. I think the other extreme is the UK. My country of home, and the UK came out of lockdown a little sooner than the US. They've got people working back in the office. They've adopted a more hybrid model a little sooner. I'd put the US somewhere in the middle of that. Again, the US for me, it's like the differences around Europe. Every state is different. I'm sure things are quite different, as you talked about in Oklahoma and LA. I'm sure they're very different in DC.
Clearly.
So I think state by state, this country is starting to recover on different paths from COVID, and then they're starting to embrace those work from home and those hybrid models at different stages. So I think the states that are getting it right are those who are not just trying to find the perfect answer. They're finding an answer for today, but they're investing heavily to set themselves up for that constant change that's about to come. So it's organizations that are equipped for future change that I think will survive better than organizations that have just tried to fix the problems that we experienced yesterday.
You're a real good gab, Spencer. I've enjoyed this a lot. Now, how do people find you? Active Ops, we see that on the screen. How do they reach out to you if a manager is listening and says, I need his expertise? How do you want to be found? Facebook, Twitter, etc.?
They can find us on our website, activeops.com. They'll find all of our details. They can experience how our software looks. They can go through some of our training. We've got some free training courses for people to get some top tips and tricks for trying to manage in this new hybrid world. But they can find us on activeops.com. Come and talk to us. We're here to help businesses large and small work out what change is needed to be equipped and ready for our business world tomorrow.
And to be nimble, because that's the future.
Absolutely, Terry.
Spencer O'Leary, thank you for being on the program Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilberg. See you next time.
CTA is a call to action to all conservatives to save America from left-wing radicals.
Nearly 45% of the US workforce already have plans for job hopping in 2021. Now, many of those 70 million job hoppers are just fed up and they're ready to work somewhere else, somewhere where they will be free. Maybe it's time for your talents to go to a city or a company that actually values your freedom. Post your resume on redballoon.work so that you can connect with this ever-growing list of free speech employers who would love to hire you.
The following is a health warning to all liberals. Please do not watch conservative television of America, as prolonged viewing can cause your brain to swell and explode and mess up your couch. CTA values all lives from the first heartbeat in the womb to the last dying breath. Conservative television of America, we say what you're thinking.